This is the first big trip that I ever take without my dad. Every year my dad would take us traveling. It was one of his favorite things to do. And last year he took us to Utah for Father's Day. This year he would have taken us somewhere new, but for Father's Day I decided to come to Iceland, which was my favorite place that my dad ever took me. And I wanted to live for a little while as if he was still here with us. Before my dad passed away, I went to a bookstore and I bought him a bunch of letters, and I had intended to give it to him on Father's Day, but Father's Day got here and he didn't. But I wrote the letters anyways. I wrote 13 of them because 13 was his favorite number. But I wrote the letters anyways. Try that again. But I wrote the letters anyways. And I wrote 13 of them because 13 was my dad's favorite number of all time. I didn't at first know what I wanted to do with the letters, but I quickly realized that I had to put them somewhere special. So I chose 13 different locations across Iceland. And this is the story of putting these letters there in memoriam for my dad. The first spot that I chose is beautiful Godafoss. The reason I chose Godafoss to start off with is because it's my favorite spot in all of Iceland based on the last time that I was here with my dad. Good. And just look at it. It's absolutely amazing. The second stop on the journey is Lake Mývatn, which is a big, huge lake in northern Iceland. It's got a lot of ducks all over the place. The scenery is just amazing. Like, there is nothing but mountains, snow-capped mountains, and water all around me. Iceland doesn't cease to amaze me. It's really the perfect spot for my dad to come and find these things. Second letter right here. And I like this spot right here. There's a bunch of ducks hanging out around here. And I'm gonna place the letter right here. Now I just gotta find a big enough rock. That's a decent sized boy. By the way, the reason that I put a rock on top of it is so that it doesn't fly away. Iceland is extremely windy. I don't need these letters to go up into a freaking waterfall or into a lake and pollute it or anything like that. It's not the purpose. And I mentioned that I'm on this trip with Carlo, my best friend. Hello. So, you know, we're just driving across Iceland, and we're driving to the next stop, which is going to be Dedifoss. And out of nowhere, we're up a mountain. We have this ridiculous, silly view going on. So the third letter goes in Dedifoss, which is the most powerful waterfall in all of Europe. It's a waterfall inside of North Iceland. Powerful waterfall for powerful men. We're good to go. There was a no drone sign, so we didn't get any drone footage of this one. Maybe the next one.
You know we out here, doing our thing out in Iceland, doing our thing, driving, driving through snow right now. It's real fun.
Carlo, can you remind me again what the date is?
Honestly, I don't know. It's somewhere in the middle of June though.
It's June 13th.
Oh, that's what it is.
And there's snow falling on my shirt right now. All right, too cold. We're children, so we decided to stop and play with the snow. Because we're children, and it was so cold. It was the coldest thing I've ever been in. My hands are about to get frostbite and freeze off. That was fun.
That was fun.
So we're in a race against time right now because it is currently 8:45 p.m. and there's a restaurant that's about an hour away that closes at 11, which is fine, except that Iceland is the most epic place that I've ever been to, and there's a waterfall every 5 kilometers. And so I see an epic waterfall and there's not a lot of time to stop and check it out, but I don't really care. I gotta stop and check it out. Also, as I'm walking up the trail, I'm like, damn, it smells like a petting zoo for some reason. And then I look up ahead, and there's just a ton of goats just hanging out by the waterfall. Because it's Iceland, and why not? Man, it was a trek to get up here. I had to fight off several goats, but this is worth it. Look at that, man. Look at that view. And the view from up here ain't too bad either. All of that back there, that's where we were coming from. So about last night. We pitched a tent. We pitched a tent, and we decided to pitch a tent on this beach. This beach was particularly beautiful. The views were amazing, and the wind was probably a paltry 30 to 40 miles an hour. But we were like, let's pitch a tent. So we used the car to block the wind, and we put a tent behind the car, thinking there's no way that winds change directions. So we knock out, and then at 6 in the morning, Carlo wakes me up saying, yo, we need to get out of here. I wake up immediately and think, like, why do we need to get out of here? And then the tent answers my question by slapping me in the face multiple times. After this occurs, the tent appears to be caving in, so we pack everything and we get outside the tent, and immediately the tent seems to collapse. We start putting things in the car. I put down one of my sleeping bags, and the sleeping bag begins to fly away at 40 miles an hour. and I proceed to chase it at less than 40 miles an hour. I'm sorry to report that I didn't get the sleeping bag. We're going to Hofen now. Oh God. We made it to Hofen, in case you were wondering. Having breakfast. So out here in Hofen, they got this big round thing, which is not supposed to represent the sun. And this is a solar system hike. So if you walk a little ways down, you're gonna eventually end up at Mercury, and then they've got one for Venus, Mars. The whole thing is about 3 kilometers long, and it's supposed to represent the solar system. And all of this in the backdrop of glaciers and mountains in the background. This place is just amazing. I decided that I wanted to put the 4th letter here. I wasn't planning on putting it here, but I really kind of fell in love with the view. This is a good example of how I'm just placing it here, and it's more the symbolism of it than it is the permanence of it. I'm not doing this because I expect the letters to be here in 20 years whenever I decide to come back to Iceland. I know they may very well be gone before the end of the day. That's not the point. These letters are temporary, just like life is. Unfortunately, just like my dad's life is. But just because something's temporary doesn't mean it's not meaningful. Right next to his home planet. That little thing right there, that's the Earth. That's where we're at. And the sun's all the way over there. We're pretty insignificant when it comes down to it. The scale of these things is amazing. Yesterday night we slept in the tent, and that ended with a disaster. So, learning from our mistakes, we decided to get a very nice hotel now.
Actual beds.
I just recorded a whole thing for you guys, and I recorded it with the microphone off. So now I have to repeat myself, and I'm not repeating all that. Basically,
I got it.
All right, go.
Curtains, darkness, good. Keep that, invest in that.
They call Iceland the land of the midnight sun. They're not lying. The happiest moment that me and Carlo had on this entire trip was when we saw a tunnel and there was darkness for a moment and we could relax. So our journey across Iceland has brought us to Vík, which is this little town that I came last time with my dad. Now before I got here, I dropped off the 5th letter at Jökulsárlón. Now Jökulsárlón is this big, huge lake on the east coast of Iceland that is leading up to a glacier, and pieces of the glacier are actually melting off of the glacier itself and going into the lake, so that there's just giant pieces of ice just floating around all over the place. It was beautiful, and it was also cold. It was the coldest place that I went to on this trip, and it's kind of fitting that I left the 5th letter there, because the 5th letter was kind of right before I got at my coldest point. You see, when I was writing these letters, I didn't have any sort of prompt in mind or any sort of process. I just sat down each day and I wrote whatever came to me. And at the beginning, it sounded a lot more dark, a lot more angry, and it kind of turned a corner after letters 5 and 6. Letter number 5 was bad, but I would say that letter number 6, in my opinion, is actually the climax of everything that I wrote. In terms of darkness, it was the darkest place that I had ventured into. So part of me wanted to put this dark letter somewhere fitting of that, somewhere like a cave or somewhere barren and some desert, desolate place, to kind of symbolize the darkness that I was feeling at that moment. But I actually decided to go the exact opposite route, and I feel pretty good about it. I found this giant field of flowers, and these flowers are everywhere, all over Iceland. I mean, they're right here, for Pete's sake. And these flowers are all over Iceland, and we found one field in particular that is just covered in flowers, like flowers as far as the eye can see. A mountain filled with flowers, and I just thought that that was the perfect place, for whatever reason. This beautiful lit up piece of light and color, to put my black darkness there, so that I could kind of communicate the message in the background of whoever picks up that letter and reads it. That it doesn't have to all be darkness, that right behind the pages there's a world still filled with life and color. Vik is a nice, quaint little town. I would stay here more time, but we got things to do. Like, I gotta go get the 7th letter done. It's kind of windy, so my hair is going all over the place. So in letter number 6, I don't address my dad for the first time in the sequence of letters, for the first and only time. And in letter number 7, I go back to addressing the letters to Eddie Gates. Now, my dad's name was Edwin Gaitan. My name is also Edwin Gaitan. I'm Edwin Gaitan Jr. But in high school, my dad created a nickname for himself because he was in a rock band and he didn't want to be known as Edwin Gaitan because that sounded too formal. So he created a nickname for himself. Based on Edwin, he came up with Eddie. Based on Gaitan, he came up with Gates. And so the name Eddie Gates was born. Then you fast forward about 20 or 30 years, and I come along, and I go to high school. And while I'm in high school, I pick up music myself. And when I pick up the music, I realize that Edwin Gaitan Jr. doesn't have that nice of a ring to it. So me thinking that I'm super original, I decided to come up with a nickname for myself. Eddie Gates. The very same nickname, except I spelled mine the cooler way. I spelled mine with the Z. He always spelled his with the S. So when I got home one day and I told my dad that Eddie Gates was my nickname, he looked at me like, "Where'd you get that nickname from?" And I was like, "I created it." And he was like, "You didn't create it, you copycat?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? This is a completely original thought that I had going here." And so in typical my dad fashion, he goes and grabs an old composition notebook from, man, it must have been from like 1983, like a full 10 years before I was even born. And he shows me that inside that composition notebook, he signs it Eddie Gates. And that my original thought wasn't actually that original. So that's the reason why most of the letters are titled to Eddie Gates and from Eddie Gates. By the way, if you notice, I'm on a beach. This is called the Black Sand Beach because, as you can see, the sand is black. And I'm leaving the 7th letter here on the Black Sand Beach in view of this weird rock structure. So when I first thought about going to Iceland, I knew that one of the things that I wanted to do, but that I didn't think was actually feasible, was putting a letter at the top of a mountain. But on our way to one of the other letters, we happened to go up a mountain, and I was able to go to the peak of a mountain and drop off the 8th letter right there at the peak. And wouldn't you know it, there was a gorgeous view. There were a couple of rainbows going on in the background. But now we're on our way to the 9th letter, and the issue is right here. We've got our car back here, and the directions are telling us to literally go this way and cross the river. So we would have to actually go across this thing and get to that rocky bank over there to keep going. I'm putting a lot of faith in Carlo right now. But we'll see. Carlo, are you guaranteeing success?
Nah, I don't guarantee it.
So we made it across the river. We're expecting to see a waterfall, but at the end of the road is a hiking trail, and the waterfall is 4 kilometers away, and it is midnight, and we have no supplies or anything like that.
So I didn't make a smart decision, surprisingly.
And I didn't even bring a jacket, so this is not a good idea. I'm not hiking 4 kilometers, but this is still pretty amazing over here. So this is still getting a letter. 9th letter, here we come. But first, I want to check out this cave. So there's just a random cave here. Right here, you can see the big hole, and we could peer on into it. At the bottom there's some ice. This place is just, this is just something else, man. It's crazy. Let's go get the 9th letter. Alright, so I'm not gonna hike 4 kilometers. I'm gonna hike 0.04 kilometers to get to the resting spot of the 9th letter. We checked out a Vik this morning, and we started our trek back down to Reykjavik for the last leg of the journey. Tomorrow morning we actually leave on the flight.
What's up?
We had a good night's sleep, and the first stop here, or the first of the last letters is gonna go, is Skogafoss. Skogafoss is a giant waterfall. My favorite thing about it is it's got these stairs up top. You can see all the tiny little people trekking their way up the mountain. I'm leaving a letter here. Last time I was here, I don't remember having so much trouble getting up these stairs. I think I've probably gotten a little bit older, especially my knees, since then. You know, last time I came, the one thing I do remember is that trail over there. It's about 8 kilometers long, and it leads to a volcano. I remember wanting to go on it so badly, but we didn't have time. This time around, we still don't have time. So I'm gonna have to come back here. So as I'm just sitting there, this lady decides to come and evangelize to us. She asked us what we were doing. I told them the reason for the videos, and she happens to whip out of her book bag this comic that says, "Who's the best dad ever?"
Ridiculous.
And of course, this is about God. I happen to be a Christian, so it's a little angel that came to visit me right now. It's pretty cool. Right now we're looking for a good spot to drop this guy off. Putting a lot of faith in the Icelandic people because their specialty of the day was a lamb burger. Alright, their faith is earned.
When in the Nordic place, you get a Viking burger. Underrated fries in Iceland. Gotta give it to them. You know how to cut up a fry.
I have a great business idea for anybody watching. A couple of them actually. But one dealing with chicken, right? What if you started a restaurant that was called Chicken Around the World? And then in that restaurant, you just have chicken, but you got like chicken parmesan for Italy, and you got fried chicken for America, and then you got like, I don't know, teriyaki chicken, teriyaki chicken for Asia, like, no, you just do all the types of chicken, but like correctly. That would be a poppin' restaurant.
Would be.
Some good business.
Put that in win-win?
Yeah.
I'd go do it.
Other business idea. That chicken idea, that's for anybody all over the world, cause like, we eat chicken everywhere.
This is a little more local now.
Nah, yeah. The good business idea here is Skogafos, where to get up to a waterfall, you gotta take these stairs.
It feels like it's a mile long of stairs. Ridiculous.
Certain parts of the stairs are rickety, and like as you're going down, there's a part of your brain that sort of fears for its life. So what if you built the world's biggest escalator and put it to go escalate people up to the top of the mountain, right? And then you charge people to ride the escalator up, and then you can leave the stairs there for people who want to go for free, who are stupid. And then here's the best part: we already got the slogan and everything, right? Because the waterfall won't be the attraction anymore. So it's gonna be all about the escalator.
It's the world's biggest escalator.
I don't know. You got the slogan at the bottom of the escalator. It's like, that's just water falling. This is you rising. What's up? That's it.
Think about it.
Invest in Icelandic ventures.
Icelandic escalator.
We made it to the rest spot for letter number 11. It's called Seljaland Foss. Seljaland Foss is this big waterfall that shoots out from a cliff. So normally the water hugs the cliff and you can't go behind it, but for this waterfall, we're able to walk right through the back of it, which is pretty cool. I just want to get a shot of it. All right. Let's go. I thought the perfect place for the letter is behind the waterfall, but it's gonna be a bit of a mission to film it, so let's go. This is wild. Next leg of our journey has brought us to the Blue Lagoon, which is about 45 minutes outside of Reykjavik, and it's got water that looks like that and rocks like that on the other side. It's basically a geothermal park where the water is heated by the bottom of the ground, where they get a lot of face stuff that they can charge 45 bucks for like an ounce for. So we made it back to Reykjavik, which means that we landed in Reykjavik, went west, and traveled all the way around the country. We took Iceland's maiden road all across the perimeter, and we saw so many things. And now we're back. Tomorrow morning we leave Iceland, and I leave this little journey behind. But before I go, I came here to say goodbye to my dad. My dad was a great man. My dad was the best father a kid could have. When I think of him, the one thing that stands out above everything is the word father. He was the epitome of what a dad is supposed to be. If you had to create a perfect dad in a lab, he would come out. Now tomorrow is Father's Day, and every Father's Day I used to look forward to it. I used to be able to hang out with my dad. This year, for the first time ever, that's not gonna happen. It's Father's Day, and I have no father. I wrote the letters to my dad because I needed to say goodbye to my dad, but before I say goodbye, I need to remember him. There's this video that my mom took when I was like maybe 3 or 4 years old of one of our very first Father's Days together. It's so old that we didn't have it on, digitally. We had it on a VHS, on a tape. And before I left to Iceland, I left it recording on my camera so that I could watch it back for the first time since he passed away. Because I need to remember my dad. And before I could say goodbye, I felt like I had to watch that video just to see him alive one more time. I've got the video loaded onto my cell phone, and I'm gonna watch it now for the first time in about 10 years.
Wow, ¿quién hizo esto? ¿Usted lo hizo? ¿Para quién es? ¡Qué bonito! This is a shirt for me. What is this? Wow!
Oh man. I lost my dad. I lost my daddy. I owe an insurmountable debt to that man. That man is the reason that I am who I am today. The debt will never be paid off, no matter what I do. But I have to live my life trying. And the only way I could come even close to paying off that debt is by being the kind of man that he was. By being the type of father and husband that he was. That's the only way I'm gonna make him proud. I just miss my dad. So much. So much it hurts. The last place that I'm putting my letters is in Hallgrímskirkja. That's a big, beautiful Icelandic church. And though I don't go to their church, we believe in the same God. I believe in God, and it's what's helped me get through these moments. I believe my dad is still out there. He's just in heaven now. And that one day, I'm gonna get the chance to see him again. I'll get a chance to ask him if he read all of these letters and whether he liked them and whether he was proud of me. That's why I'm doing all of this. To accept the fact that he's not here, but to also realize that there's hope even in the loss, even in the biggest loss that I've ever experienced in my entire life, and probably the biggest loss that I'll ever experience in my life. Even then, there is yet life, there is yet love, there is yet beauty in this world. And it's not just Iceland that's proof of that. I just like Iceland as a symbol for it because it's so beautiful, but love is everywhere. Love is in every child's smile. Love is in every little baby. Love is in every old person and everything in between. There's love and life everywhere. And that love and that life is worth fighting for, and it's worth living for. That's what my dad taught me. My dad taught me that the reason those things are worth living for is because God created them, and God created them valuable.
Can you carry him? Walk.
This sucks.